It had been nearly 2 years since I last laid eyes on my grandfather's old lake house. Life in the city kept me chained to construction sites and office headaches, and the idea of cleaning out cobwebs in a creaky house 3 hours away always fell off the to-do list. But this time, I wasn't backing out. My wife Sarah had nagged me for months, half playfully, half dead serious, to make time. So I finally took a break, loaded up the SUV with snacks, bug spray, and our son Jake's video games, and hit the road. As we rolled through the tree-lined road that led to the lake, my heart actually fluttered a little. That dusty old house sat on 3 acres of prime water-kissed land, and despite years of neglect, it had good bones, like a boxer who'd gone soft but still had a killer left hook. The idea was simple. Check in, check the damage, then start mapping out a renovation plan that wouldn't bankrupt us. Maybe even fish a little. But as we turned the final bend, something felt off. There was a shiny silver Range Rover parked in the gravel drive, then a red crossover beside it. I frowned. That wasn't right. No one should have been there. My grandfather was long gone, and I hadn't given a single soul permission to step foot on that land. Sarah leaned forward in her seat. "Tom, is someone living here?" Before I could answer, I spotted movement on the deck. 2 women in swimsuits clinking glasses of wine under my grandfather's rotting pergola. Laughter echoed across the property. A little kid darted by with a towel, nearly colliding with Jake's wide-eyed stare from the back seat. I killed the engine and stepped out slowly, unsure if I was about to walk into a trespassing misunderstanding or some kind of deranged open house party. A man in flip-flops approached with a relaxed smile. "Hey, you must be the next guests? Karen told us someone might be checking in later today." My eyebrows almost shot off my forehead. "I'm sorry. What? Guests? Yeah, this place is awesome. Karen D. hooked us up through some private site. She said the previous owner sold the place, and she manages it now for the HOA. He held up his phone with a reservation confirmation. The header read, "Lakefront Haven. Property managed by Karen D." I took the phone, blinking hard. There it was. My house. My porch. My grill. The rate? $250 a night. Weekly discounts available. Sarah stepped beside me, her voice low. "Tom, this is your house. What the hell is going on?" I didn't answer. I was still staring at the listing, trying to process the absurdity. Karen D. I'd heard the name. Some new president of the local HOA. A woman with a reputation for calling the cops if your grass got a half-inch too ambitious. But this? I handed the phone back. "I'm going to need you all to finish your stay and be gone by the end of the week." The guy looked startled. "Wait, you're not part of the rental service?" "No, I'm the owner, the real one." He laughed, awkward and unsure. "Karen said," she had the rights." "Yeah," I muttered, heading for the house. "She's about to find out she didn't." That night, I barely slept. Not because the beds were uncomfortable. Hell, I hadn't even made it that far, but because I couldn't stop staring at my laptop screen, eyes burning as I clicked through site after site. There it was, again and again. My house, listed as a luxury lakeside retreat, curated by Karen D., and the crown jewel of our HOA-managed vacation portfolio. Portfolio? What portfolio? And since when did the HOA run vacation rentals? The listings were slick, professionally taken photos with tasteful lighting, even drone shots, shots I'd never seen before in my life. The grass looked too green, the shutters repainted a glossy navy, and someone had apparently installed hanging string lights along the porch railing. My porch. My damn railing. I clicked on the reviews next, and my stomach twisted. Dozens of them, going back over a year. Charming spot. Karen was so welcoming. Great weekend getaway. Loved the fire pit. We'll be back next summer. I even found a comment calling it the flagship of Lakeshore Cove HOA's hospitality program. It was like reading fan fiction written about my life by a lunatic. The next morning, while Sarah took Jake into town to grab some groceries and cool off, I started calling every short-term rental site listed. I gave them property IDs, listing numbers, everything I could. Most reps were polite, but cagey. They confirmed the listings existed, yes, but they couldn't provide information about the hosts beyond the public profile name. Karen D., he executive host. I slammed the laptop shut. Mid-afternoon, I walked the perimeter of the house. New solar path lights, an upgraded garden hose rack, freshly laid gravel under the deck. Somebody had been sprucing things up, on my dime. Whether she was pocketing rental income or running some HOA-funded fantasy island, I didn't know yet, but it smelled like fraud. And then, as if summoned by the rising heat of my rage, she showed up. I heard the familiar click-clack of heels on gravel before I saw her. Blonde bob. Expensive sunglasses. That tight-lipped smile you get from people who say, "I'm just trying to help," right before destroying your life. Karen Doyle. She didn't even look surprised to see me. "Oh," she said, adjusting her tote bag. "I didn't realize you were staying. Usually the check-ins are on Fridays, but—" "Cut the act," I snapped. "This is my house. You're not a realtor. You're not a manager. You're a trespasser who's been profiting off my property for over a year." Her smile didn't waver, but her tone shifted, just slightly sharper. "That's quite the claim. I've been maintaining this property in your absence. You abandoned it. The HOA had to step in. I've curated a reputation for this location, and I've invested—" "In my house," I barked. "You never had my permission. You never even asked." She gave a small shrug, as if I were making a fuss about borrowed sugar. Nobody else complained. I've enhanced community value. The guests have been lovely. "The guests," I muttered. "Yeah, I'll be talking to them, and the police, and a lawyer." That got her attention. Her lips tightened, her eyes narrowed behind those designer shades. "Well, that's your right," she said, her voice now dipped in ice. "But just know, HOA policy backs me. The community appreciates what I've done here." I stared at her. "We'll see what the law has to say about that." She turned on her heel and walked off, as if she hadn't just admitted to orchestrating the most casual burglary of the century. And I stood there, breathing hard, the reality setting in. This wasn't just trespassing, it was a scheme, a full-on resort-style racket, and it was time to shut it down. The first thing I did the next morning was change every damn lock. Front door, back door, tool shed, even the ancient padlock on the boathouse that hadn't worked since Bush was in office. Then I installed motion lights, threw up 6 fresh private property. No trespassing signs, and parked my truck sideways at the driveway entrance like a blockade. Subtlety was dead. Karen had declared war, and I was done playing nice. Later that afternoon, while I was drilling the last bracket for a new gate latch, I heard tires crunching gravel. I turned around and nearly laughed. There she was again, Karen, marching up in full battle dress, collared shirt with the HOA emblem, clipboard, sunglasses, and flanked by 2 guys in matching black polos that read HOA Community Security. One of them was chewing gum with the enthusiasm of a cow. The other wore tactical sunglasses like he was about to breach a meth lab. "Mr. Bennett," Karen called, voice sweet but tight, "we're going to need access. We have a confirmed reservation checking in at 5. I stepped away from the gate and leaned on the fence post. No one's checking in ever again. This property is closed. Indefinitely. One of the henchmen stepped forward, puffing up like a poorly trained German shepherd. "Sir, you're interfering with HOA operations. That's a violation." "Violation of what?" I said. "I'm not in the HOA. This house never was, and you know it." Karen clicked her pen and scribbled something on her clipboard. "That's debatable. We've been maintaining the grounds. Guests have been scheduled for weeks. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about community expectations." "Expectations don't override ownership," I said flatly. "And unless you've got a court order in that clipboard, you're all trespassing. I've got the title deed in the house and cameras running from 4 angles. Try me." Karen narrowed her eyes. "Then I'm calling the police. You're threatening guests with unlawful occupancy denial." "Please do," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've been meaning to introduce myself." 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up. A young deputy got out, one hand resting on his belt as he took in the scene. 3/10 HOA goons and one angry guy with a cordless drill. Karen launched into her pitch, playing the victim. "This man is refusing entry to a property that's been publicly rented. He's threatening HOA staff. He's not even listed in our member directory." The deputy turned to me. I handed over my ID, title documents, and a manila folder fat with listing screenshots, timestamps, and a notarized affidavit from my lawyer. After a few minutes of looking it over, he gave a long, low whistle. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Karen, "this property legally belongs to Mr. Bennett. There's no record of transfer, lease, or HOA jurisdiction. You don't have a leg to stand on." "But he's interfering," she started, but the deputy cut her off. "You're trespassing. One more incident, and we'll start issuing citations. Is that clear?" Karen's face twisted, but she nodded. Her goons followed like puppies kicked out of a dog park. As their SUV disappeared down the road, I finally exhaled. One skirmish down, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It was time to stop reacting and start playing offense. Karen was too smooth, too rehearsed. She'd built a narrative and repeated it so many times, she probably believed it herself, that she was the steward of some noble rental operation, a misunderstood local heroine maintaining value, while I, the absentee owner, had abandoned the place, like a rusted-out trailer, and people believed her. Hell, she had a glowing 4.9-star rating. So I decided to flip the script. That week, I called in a favor from an old friend, Justin Navarro, a former college roommate who'd since gone into corporate law, clean-cut, quick on his feet, and with the sort of bland white-collar look that screamed, "I won't question anything if the wine is chilled." Perfect for a test run. He posed as a tourist, reached out to Karen D. through one of the rental platforms still hosting the listing. The response was almost immediate. Bubbly, welcoming, and weirdly intimate. She called herself a community liaison and described the house as part of a private HOA lake experience. There was no mention of me, no disclaimer, not even a hint that she was acting on behalf of someone else. She sounded like she owned the place. The kicker? She even gave Justin a digital welcome packet. It had PDF maps, codes to a keypad lock I'd already ripped out, and a document labeled Limited Property Access Agreement. It looked official, fancy formatting, a fake notary stamp, and a forged signature I recognized instantly. Mine. I watched as Justin forwarded the whole packet to me. Every email, every message. We got her, in her own words. Still, we needed a smoking gun, something beyond screenshots. So we went a step further. Justin arrived at the house for check-in on Saturday morning, GoPro strapped discreetly in his shirt button. As planned, he parked down the road and waited. At precisely 11:15, a silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. A middle-aged woman with over-processed hair and a clipboard stepped out. It wasn't Karen herself, but close, her assistant, Cindy Hale, a local real estate agent who moonlighted as Karen's property consultant. She greeted Justin like he was a celebrity. "Welcome! We're so excited to host you." Karen sends her best. She's tied up at the HOA meeting, but asked me to show you around. Justin played his part to perfection. "So, you guys own this place?" "Oh, yes," she chirped. "It's part of the HOA portfolio now. The previous owner signed over access a while back, some kind of legal trust thing. Karen manages it all." Justin casually asked, "So this isn't like someone else's property?" Cindy waved him off. No, all perfectly authorized. You're in good hands." And just like that, we had it. On video. Fraud. A fake management claim. A direct lie about ownership. After Cindy left, Justin texted me one sentence. "She walked right into it." I almost laughed out loud. This wasn't just a case of someone squatting with charm. It was organized theft. A boutique scam with wine tastings and towel service. And now I had the proof to burn it all down. With Cindy's little monologue now captured on video, the walls around Karen's rental kingdom were starting to buckle. But something still didn't add up. There was too much polish. Too many upgrades. I hadn't authorized a single dime to be spent on my property, yet somehow the house looked like it had been curated by a Pinterest-obsessed real estate agent on a stimulant binge. So I went digging. I pulled the HOA's publicly available annual budget reports, those dry little PDFs no one ever reads, and spent 3 evenings in the lake house with my laptop and a bottle of cheap scotch, clicking through every line item like a forensic accountant, with a personal grudge. And there it was. Listed under community enhancements and shared use spaces were entries like waterside gazebo repairs, $3,400, deck restoration, lakeside zone, $7,600, and the one that made me spit whiskey, jacuzzi replacement, premium unit, $11,200. There was only one lakeside gazebo in the neighborhood, mine. Next morning, I tracked down an old contact, Josh, a landscaping contractor who used to work under one of my crews back in the city. I gave him the address and asked if he'd ever done work out here. His reply? A photo of the invoice, addressed to Lakeshore HOA, worksite listed as my property, and signed by none other than Karen Doyle. That was it. She'd been laundering HOA funds to make my house rental ready, probably spinning it as a shared amenity for the neighborhood. In reality, she was boosting her rental income while HOA dues paid for the string lights and lawn treatments. But the real kicker came the day I got a call from Gary Latham, a guy I'd never met, but who turned out to be the former treasurer of the HOA. He'd heard through the grapevine that someone was finally pushing back on Karen. We met at a diner off Route 41, and over a plate of greasy eggs, he spilled everything. "She pushed me out," he said, shaking his head. "I raised concerns about the finances, funds being spent on non-HOA parcels, invoices that didn't match the maps. A month later, I was voted out in a closed-door meeting. She runs that board like a cult." Then Gary leaned in. "And here's something no one wants to talk about. She has a record. Fraud. Petty real estate scam back in Nevada. About 10 years ago. She changed her name, used her maiden name on HOA filings to dodge background checks." I froze. "You're serious?" Gary nodded. "I found it the day she was nominated. I flagged it. They ignored me, said it was too late to reconsider. I stared at my coffee like it had betrayed me. This woman wasn't just bold. She was experienced. That night, my lawyer ran a check using her original name, Karen Mullins. And there it was, convicted of wire fraud and falsifying property records in 2012. Pled out, sealed in most databases, but not sealed enough. We gathered everything into a tidy little folder labeled Predatory History Exhibit C. If Karen thought her little rental circus could survive in daylight, she was about to find out what it felt like to get scorched. It happened at 2:42 a.m. Not that I was asleep. I'd been sitting in the living room with a mug of burnt coffee and a loaded browser tab of how to file a civil suit against a homeowners association. That's when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Backyard. West fence. I glanced at the screen. 3 heat blobs on the thermal overlay. One of them was wearing a backpack. Another held what looked suspiciously like bolt cutters. The third had a damn clipboard. No way. I stepped to the window and peeked through the blinds. There they were, like raccoons in Lululemon, dressed all in black. Well, black and tactical beige. They were crouched near my fence, whispering and gesturing like they were about to breach an embassy, not hop into a middle-aged man's backyard. And leading the charge? Karen Doyle, in yoga pants and a windbreaker with HOA President, printed in Comic Sans on the back. I nearly choked on my coffee. I switched to my phone camera, hit record, and dialed 911. I didn't whisper. I wanted them to hear me. Hi, yes, this is Tom Bennett. I've got 3 trespassers trying to enter my private property. One appears to be my local HOA president. They're wearing all black and carrying tools. No, this is not a joke. Outside, the bolt cutters went chanky, and a chain hit the grass. They were through the side gate. Karen held up a flashlight like Gandalf leading a fellowship of morons. Cindy Hale, yep, our dear real estate fairy, was right behind her, gripping a folder like it was the Constitution. The third guy I recognized as Tony, one of her so-called HOA security staff. He was built like a vending machine and had the situational awareness of a carrot. They crept past the koi pond and made a beeline toward the back deck. Cindy muttered, "Do you think he's here?" Karen whispered back, "Doesn't matter. We're just performing an emergency property audit." Emergency audit? My ass. I walked out onto the porch and flipped on the floodlights. 3 deer in headlamps. Karen's clipboard fell into the hydrangeas. "Evening," I said. "Bit early for a brunch meeting, don't you think?" Tony froze mid-step, like a kid caught raiding the cookie jar. Cindy took an actual step back, heels sinking into the mulch. Karen recovered fastest. Of course she did. "This property is under HOA inspection," she barked, with the confidence of someone who had clearly rehearsed this moment in the mirror. "You're obstructing official community business." "You're breaking and entering," I replied. "And there's about to be a 4th person joining this conversation. He has a badge." As if on cue, headlights lit up the trees. Sheriff's cruiser. Blue and red strobes painting the scene like a low-budget rave. Deputy Daniels stepped out, blinking like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Karen, why are you on this man's property at 2:45 in the morning?" She straightened her spine like she was preparing to accept an Oscar. "Officer, we're investigating irregularities in community access. I have authorization." Daniels cut her off. "You do not. I've reviewed the case. This property is not under HOA jurisdiction. And unless you're auditioning for a very stupid reboot of Ocean's 11, I suggest you shut it down." Tony raised his hands. "I was just here to carry stuff." "Yeah," I said. Like the bolt cutters? Karen sputtered. You don't understand. This property is vital to community image. It belongs to us in spirit. Daniels pulled out his cuffs. Karen Doyle, he said calmly, you are under arrest for trespassing, attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit unlawful entry, and, possibly my favorite, bringing a clipboard to a felony. As he clicked the cuffs, she yelled, This is a witch hunt. I am the face of this neighborhood. I have rights. He guided her toward the cruiser. And I have a booking sheet. Let's compare notes. As the cruiser drove off, lights fading, I stood barefoot on my deck in pajama pants and a robe, sipping what was left of my coffee. Not a bad start to the morning. Courtrooms smell like polish and tension, a mix of lemon disinfectant, old wood, and suppressed rage. Karen sat at the defendant's table in a navy blue blazer, at least 2 sizes too tight for her ego. Her expression was a masterclass in performative outrage. Wide eyes, dignified frowns, the occasional headshake at her attorney's whispering. Beside her, Cindy fidgeted like a kid about to take a math test in a language she didn't speak. Tony wasn't present. He'd flipped and taken a plea deal in exchange for testifying. Smartest move he ever made. My lawyer, Paul Keller, silver-haired, steel-nerved, and built like a courtroom predator, stood tall with a stack of files and an expression that said, I eat fraud for breakfast. Opening statements were fire and gasoline. Karen's defense tried to argue that the entire incident was a misunderstood property arrangement, that she had been fulfilling a communal need and believed in good faith that the house had been abandoned. Paul stood and simply said, We'll prove otherwise, with her own words, her forged documents, and her previous felony record. The courtroom stirred. Karen's eyes twitched. Over the next 3 days, the prosecution brought out everything. Video of Cindy falsely stating that the home was part of the HOA portfolio. Copies of invoices paid from HOA funds for my landscaping and jacuzzi. Screenshots from Karen's rental accounts. The fraudulent welcome packet with the forged signature. And finally, Paul's pièce de résistance, her prior conviction for wire fraud in Nevada under her maiden name, Karen Mullins. When that detail hit the room, it was like someone dropped a bowling ball in a kiddie pool. Karen's smirk cracked. Her attorney paled. They tried to object. They tried to deflect. But the record was there. She had lied on HOA officer paperwork, lied to rental platforms, lied to the community. The jury took less than 4 hours. Verdict? Guilty on all civil counts. Criminal charges, trespassing, attempted fraud, falsifying records, illegal short-term rental income, misuse of HOA funds. The sentence? 1 year probation, 500 hours of community service, full restitution to me in the amount of $85,000, plus $27,000 in legal expenses. A permanent bar from holding any HOA-related office anywhere. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood and said, I just want my house back, without tourists, trespassers, or tactical clipboards. Even the court reporter laughed. Karen didn't. Her empire had crumbled into mulch and laminated lies. 3 weeks later, we held a party. A real one this time. No guests checking in via app. Just friends, neighbors, family, hot dogs, beer, and the best damn potato salad Sarah had ever made. We called it the Unbooking BBQ. Everyone from the HOA board came. The new board. Turns out, Karen's downfall inspired half the community to vote her cronies out and replace them with people who had souls. One elderly neighbor even brought a piñata shaped like a clipboard. It died swiftly and loudly. But the moment everyone remembers happened just before sunset. Jake and I were up on the ladder, tools in hand, mounting the new custom metal sign onto the front gate. When I stepped down, Sarah handed me a cold beer and pointed to the small crowd gathering to read it. The sign read, "Private property. Not for rent. Not for HOA. If your name is Karen, turn around." Below that, in smaller letters, "Trespassers will be fed to the koi." Seriously. People cheered. Someone played "Another One Bites the Dust." Even the sheriff showed up later and asked to take a selfie with the sign. As dusk fell over the lake and laughter drifted through the trees, I leaned back in my chair and looked at the house. My house. No strangers in the hot tub. No forged contracts. No HOA ninjas lurking in the bushes. Just peace, family, and the faint glow of a string light I actually approved. And if Karen ever tried to step foot on my property again, well, the koi were hungry.